This is just a quick preamble to explain the general why of this video. See, I originally made this last year among some of the other projects at the time. However, because I didn't understand how the copyright system on YouTube worked, after it got blocked over and over again, I eventually just scrapped it, even though the whole thing was pretty much already finished. Now that I've decided to come back, I figured I might as well make it listenable, even if I have to butcher the video itself quite a bit. I was actually pretty proud of the commentary in this, and I still stand by the opinions expressed. So I don't know, maybe just run it in the background while you clean your house or something. And if you can't stand to listen to these without some sort of visual reference, then maybe just watch the episode first. I don't know. Anyway, please enjoy.
King of the Hill, one of my favorite animated TV shows of all time, and the subject of my most recent binge obsession. It's relatable, it's easy to watch, and most of all, it's insanely funny. Due to these factors combined, I recently binged all 13 seasons of the show, almost 260 episodes, and was pleased to find that unlike many of the other long-running series that I've enjoyed, King of the Hill managed to keep a level of high quality throughout almost its entire run. I loved the show and could not get enough of it. I saw interviews, listened to podcasts, and watched every bit of extra content I could get my hands on with rapt attention. Finally, I decided that I had to make a video on the show, like a final salute so I could put my obsession to rest. But what to talk about? I'm too lazy to do every episode, I'm not smart enough to do deep dives on the characters or anything, and it's difficult to just review the show as a whole. So here we are, talking about just one episode. My favorite episode of the entire series, and the one that best encapsulates what I believe to be the core of the show. Season 2, Episode 1, How to Fire a Rifle Without Really Trying. I'll be doing a full rundown of the episode, however, of course, I recommend you watch it yourself before continuing on this video, just so it makes a lot more sense. The episode opens with Hank and his son Bobby at the Texas State Fair, playing a variety of carnival games, all of which Bobby fails at. A frequent theme or conflict in the show is that Hank doesn't believe that his son acts in a way befitting of a boy his age, or at the very least, he doesn't really understand him. I mean, it's what this iconic line is born out of.
That boy ain't right.
Point being, it's a reoccurring issue, thus making it all the more surprising and pleasing for Hank when at a simple duck shooting game, Bobby shows a real knack for operating a rifle. Finally, here's something that fits into Hank's perception of what an American boy Bobby's age should be into. Guns. So he sets to work, trying to foster this newly discovered talent. First, he has to convince his wife Peggy, which doesn't take much, although it is hilarious what Hank considers to be the appropriate age to own your first rifle.
Bobby is too young to own a rifle. It is too dangerous.
He's 12. He hasn't been too young for 5 years.
I mean, I didn't get to shoot my first rifle till I was at least 10. Then it's off to buy Bobby a gun, which has my favorite joke in the entire episode.
Can I keep my new gun in my room?
Sure,
Can I keep the bullets in my pocket?
if you want.
Can I put a gun rack on my bike?
Do you know how long I've been waiting for you to ask me that?
I just adore this show's comedy so much. The most absurd things are said so dryly, and it's so sincere that I can't help but laugh. After all that, it's off to the gun ranges, so Bobby can finally get a feel for his new rifle. And unsurprisingly, he does great. Due to Bobby's spectacular shooting skills, someone suggests that they should sign up for the father-son fun shoot, a competition to see which pair of Papa and Pee-wee is the best at murdering paper. With Bobby's newfound ability, they're sure to win. Only one problem. It's not just a son shootout, it's for father and son. And unbeknownst to everyone, including Hank up to this moment, he sucks. Oh man, what a twist. Yep, turns out that for all of Hank's talk about the greatness of firearms, he himself is a terrible shot. Admittedly, it isn't entirely his fault. He's so shaky due to the fact that he associates it with his piece of shit father Cotton, who taught him how to shoot in a, well, non-constructive way.
No wonder that kid from the playground stole your pail. He knows you can't shoot.
I want my binky back.
Man, if Hank's still young enough to have a binky, maybe he really wasn't joking when he said Bobby was getting too old. Well, anyway, in an attempt to hide his shame, Hank doesn't tell Bobby about his lackluster shooting ability and instead rushes home, clearly upset about his inability to perform. With a gun, I mean. The next day, he goes to the range, alone, early in the morning so that no one will be there, just to confirm this terrible truth. However, it doesn't go entirely to plan as he ends up running into this guy, Philip Nye, a sports psychologist who gives another one of the best lines in the episode.
Do you just hang out here all day waiting for someone to miss a lot?
Oh, just in the mornings when the lousy shots arrive. In the afternoons, I go to the bowling alley.
Hank obviously doesn't believe in this psychology nonsense, so he leaves. However, he does keep the gentleman's card. So Hank goes home, defeated, but rather than admitting to his family the truth, he attempts to bore Bobby into disliking guns by signing him up for a shooting safety course. Ugh, have any of you ever done these? Because they are just as boring as Hank thought they would be. However, in Bobby's class, we get to meet this lovely individual who actually has the best joke in the entire episode.
I didn't know it was loaded is not an acceptable excuse. I wasn't there, or I never met those people, are better excuses.
Even so, Hank's plan fails, and Bobby's just as excited for the competition, if not more so. So Hank tries to put his foot down, and in doing so speaks blasphemy.
You shouldn't take guns to school with you. They're dangerous.
And it's so funny how all of Hank's friends come out to yell at him. It even gives way for the actual funniest joke.
Let me ask you this. A guy breaks into your house, but you don't have a gun. How are you going to shoot him?
Nonetheless, Hank is having none of it, so he entirely puts the kibosh on Bobby's marksmanship dream. But after a heart-to-heart with Peggy, where he admits his faults.
Peggy, I can't shoot.
What?
I can't. My aim is terrible. I can barely keep the gun steady.
I still love you.
He decides that he has to do the competition anyway, if not for his own sake, then for Bobby's. But he figures that if he's going to go out there and embarrass himself anyway, then he might as well try everything he can to, well, not do that. This includes taking a visit to the sports psychologist from earlier. Here he digs deep and really starts to open up about the psychological trauma that he has associated between his relationship with guns and his relationship with his father. Just kidding. Opening up isn't even a phrase in Hank's vocabulary. Actually, it appears like Hank starts to open up, but the psychologist shoots him down and instead teaches him a technique called visualization, which I guess is a real thing, and it does seem to improve his accuracy, so I guess the session helped, although no real progress was made. Finally comes the day of the big competition. Hank, Bobby, and all the other father-son duos are lined up as the string of increasingly stupid and convoluted challenges are explained to them. I love this home invasion one, where you have to trust your son to aim directly over top of you. But the games begin, and while it initially looks like Hank might blow it all in the beginning, he uses the tips from the sports psychologist and ends up pulling it all together. They crush the first 3 rounds and make it all the way to second place with only one more challenge left: accuracy. All things considered, they have a good chance of winning. That is, until a beast from the past rears his ugly head.
Sorry I'm late. I had to stop by the Wax Museum again and give the finger to FDR.
And just like that, all of Hank's trauma comes flooding back right before the final round. I get that the point is to hate Cotton, but I hate him. This brings us to the end. Due to an error by the team in first place, Hank and Bobby are now right on their tail. All that's left is for Hank to place one more accurate shot, so he readies his rifle, lines up his sights, and...
Miss.
And the Mackays win again.
He misses. So it cuts to Bobby, who surely must be disappointed. But no, in fact, he's still as jolly as ever. I know I've joked through this whole video about how every line is the best moment in the episode, but this one really is my favorite. Bobby didn't care about first place. He's not upset that Hank lost in the contest. He's just really happy to have been able to spend the day doing something he loves with his dad. It's just really sweet. And I love how it ends with them walking off into the sunset, celebrating their second place victory, before they remember that they forgot Peggy and have to go back to get her.
We forgot Mom.
Oh, well, let's go get her.
And so ends How to Fire a Rifle Without Really Trying, my favorite King of the Hill episode of all time. But why do I love this episode so much? Well, the best place to start is definitely the comedy. Dudes, this episode, well, actually, the entire show is so freaking funny. As a true-blooded American myself, the jokes in this show are so relatable, and the best part of it is that 90% of the time, they're not even considered jokes in the show. It's just that these characters are such extreme stereotypes of the people that they're representing that their regular conversations are so funny. In this episode in particular, almost everything the characters say and do is so hilarious, even if in-universe it's not supposed to be a joke.
Where's the children's gun section?
Aisle 47.
This episode even avoids a problem a lot of other episodes suffer from, being that none of the jokes have aged that poorly. Unlike quite a few other episodes, I mean, the show first came out in 1997, so not everything holds up super well, but this episode doesn't really have any problem like that. Almost all of the jokes are effectively timeless. Moving past the comedy is the other reason I love this episode so much. That being the story and the relationship between the characters that I believe is at the heart of this episode, as well as the whole show. At the beginning of this episode, I made the frankly bold claim that I believe that this episode encapsulates the core of the show, so I think it's finally time for me to explain what I meant. To me, the core of King of the Hill has always been the relationship between Hank and Bobby, and how the experiences of Hank's past influence the expectations he has for his son, as well as the lessons he chooses to impress upon him. The problem being that Hank himself didn't have a phenomenal youth, in large part due to the influences from his own shitty father Cotton. Due to these influences, Hank has a somewhat twisted perception of what a boy like Bobby has to be and do. It's a central focus of numerous episodes, such as The Unbearable Blindness of Lang, or The Three Coaches and Bobby, that Hank projects himself onto Bobby and then gets disappointed when his son isn't able to live up to his own standards. He considers Bobby an extension of himself, like his lawn or his truck, and just like with those other extensions, Hank thinks, if my son is disorderly, then what does that say about me? However, this line of thinking fails to account for the fact that Bobby is his own person, with interests, desires, and skills separate from Hank's. And I think this is why I love this episode so much. It takes this pretty standard conflict and flips it on its head. Instead of failing at something Hank tries to show him, Bobby actually excels, and it's Hank who has to come to terms with his own shortcomings. And it's interesting how Hank's first plan is to just get Bobby to hate shooting. It shows how really he would rather bury his embarrassment than foster his son's ability, an ability that if he had been any good at it, he would be more than happy to explore it with Bobby. I love the lessons learned here. It teaches Hank to try harder to understand Bobby and to help him pursue his interests, even if they don't benefit Hank. It also teaches him that you don't always have to win, and especially for Bobby, it's more about spending time with those that you love rather than worrying about how it'll all end up. And that's it. This concludes my sort of review, sort of discussion of How to Fire a Rifle Without Really Trying, my favorite episode of King of the Hill. This is actually the first video I've made on something non-video game related, so tell me what you think. It was a lot of fun, although it was difficult to decide on a topic. And I guess that's all for me, so have a good rest of your day, and I'll catch you next time, bro chochos.